Part 102. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1011. Chapter 1011 Rare Good News. The war suddenly escalated to the Empress and concubine Yu. Naturally, Fan Kinjao couldn't interrupt, but looking at concubine Yu's face, it was the Empress who should have declared victory in this battle again. Concubine Yu was trembling with anger, but no matter how unwilling she was, she couldn't really offend the courtiers present because of her momentary rivalry. She could only let go of Yu Ziming's hand and let Yu Ziming run to the Yu family. He did his job over there and walked towards his seat. While passing by Fan Kinjao's seat, concubine Yu deliberately stopped and said, "The Hua family is good at raising children, and they have been taught to do so at a young age. As for what exactly it looks like, it won't be a good look anyway." Fan Kinjao nodded slightly and said, "Thank you, concubine Yu, for the compliment." Concubine Yu: "Where did you hear this as a compliment?" Concubine Yu couldn't tell now whether Fan Kinjao was too thick-skinned or shameless at all, but facing Fan Kinjao's smiling face and kicking her into the cotton, she continued walking towards her seat. What else can be done? The princes and concubines trembled even more when they saw concubine Yu's leaving figure, and they all quietly cast admiring glances at Fan Kinjao. Not only did she not give in to the most favored imperial concubine today, she was actually able to resist. "Sure enough, you are still the crown princess, you are so awesome." When concubine Yu sat down, Renge also came back with cakes in her arms. However, this time it was not Renge who came back by herself, but by two who carried her back in person. This treatment made everyone jealous. Concubine Yu's face naturally didn't look good. She suppressed the anger in her heart, looked in the direction of the emperor and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, it's getting late. Let's have a banquet." Emperor Yongchang looked at concubine Yu's smiling face and waved his hand, "Let's have a banquet." Concubine Yu got what she wanted. When she withdrew her gaze, she did not forget to glance in the direction of the Empress. Empress Zhen 11 seemed not to have seen it at all, and she felt extremely calm. In the past, it was because she couldn't think about it that she was so heartbroken over the scumbag and the bitch. Thinking back to how heartbroken she was in those years, it was really ridiculous to think about it. Now that I think about it, I can see clearly what I couldn't see before. Over the years, concubine Yu has only gained face in front of the emperor to achieve her glory to this day. But now that the children have grown up, who can have the last laugh? Who knows until we reach the last step? You have a son, and I also have a son. But the daughters-in-law I have are things you can't even dream of. On this point alone, concubine Yu cast tens of thousands of winks in front of the Emperor's and Empress Zhen 11 felt full of superiority in her heart. After the banquet, the hall became obviously lively. The courtiers gathered together and chatted, and the princes also started chatting. Princess Heshuo County took the opportunity to get close to Fan Kinjao, and she didn't forget to hug Rengeir in her arms. "Has Brother Ren agreed to get married?" Princess Heshuo County asked softly. No matter how calm he was, Fan Kinjao almost didn't spit out a sip of tea when he heard these words. He looked at his adoptive mother and said helplessly, "Brother Ren, how old are you? Besides, the Hua family never regards the marriage of their children as a priority. Li, even if it's the earliest, we have to wait until Brother Ren reaches adulthood." The Princess of Heshuo County looked uninterested. "I am willing to be the benefit of your Hua family. The child is small, but it is not a matter of a blink of an eye to grow up. I look at Brother Ren and he is so happy. How about we get married?" The Crown Prince of Qingchuan, he regards Rengeir as his brother, but his mother actually regards Rengeir as her son-in-law. Looking at the sincerity on his mother's face, he wished he could take Brother Ren home right now. Crown Prince Qingchuan really wanted to say, "Mother, can a man get married to a man?" Rengeer was young and really couldn't understand what Princess Heshuo said, but looking at Princess Heshuo's smile that looked like she was planning something, he was still so frightened that he dropped the grape berries in his hand. Fan Kinjao took another bunch of new grapes and handed them to Brother Ren. Although he had the same doubts as Crown Prince Jing Chuan, he already guessed something in his mind: is there a foster mother? The Princess of Heshuo County liked Fan Kinjao's cleverness. She also felt more and more unwell in the past few days, but she didn't want to trouble Fan Kinjao anymore, so she found a trustworthy imperial doctor to come over and take a look. It occurred to me that it actually happened again. Although I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, if it's a girl, why not let Brother Ren marry us, Princess Heshuo County said with a smile. Hearing these words, Fan Kinjao put his hand on the wrist of the Princess of Heshuo County. When her adoptive mother came last time, she didn't notice it because she was depressed at that time, which covered up her original pulse. Now that her adoptive mother is only thinking about the child in her belly, the depression in her heart has disappeared, and the real pulse has disappeared. The pulse condition also appeared. The shape of the pulse should be as smooth as a bead, with extremely fluent pulses. The 2-foot pulse is slippery and rapid, and the pulse finger is strong. It is different from the yang pulse in the kun. The most important thing is that the right pulse beats abnormally and obviously. As the saying goes, men are on the left and women are on the right. This pulse condition may really be what the adoptive mother wishes. Fan Kinjao subconsciously looked at Rengeer, who was being held by Princess Heshuo County. He had a feeling that he was about to see Rengeer marry a wife and have children. Seeing Fan Kinjao's expression, Princess Heshuo didn't understand anything. She smiled from ear to ear. She looked at Brother Ren and said, "In the future, we will be a family, Brother Ren. In the future, when you have nothing to do, ask your mother to take you to Heshuo County Prince's mansion, or I can visit you." In order to win over her son-in-law, the Princess of Heshuo County really went all out. Rengeer nodded drowsily, took out a piece of pastry from his sleeve and handed it to Prince Jing Chuan. "Brother Jing Chuan, eat the pastry. I brought it to you specially." Crown Prince Jing Chuan. Hands on the future brother-in-law's pastries. Fan Kinjao saw that his adoptive mother liked Renge so much, and he felt that it was a good thing. Although his adopted father was only a county king, it was only temporary. As long as Bailey Fengming can really sit on that chair, his adoptive father, like the Hua family, is a person who has the ability to serve the dragon. The prince will not be blessed, but becoming a vassal king is still a piece of cake. By the time that happens, the foster mother will have a real princess in her belly. Furthermore, Fan Kinjao can trust his adopted father and adopted mother, and his grandfather and grandmother are equally assured. If Brother Ren really marries the daughter of his adopted mother, it will be a good match for Brother Ren. Marriage. Compared with the current situation, the fact that the adoptive mother is pregnant is a rare piece of good news. Just as Fan Kinjao was thinking, he saw Bailey Rong's glance quietly at the door of the hall. At the same time, a black shadow flashed past the door of the hall, and Fan Kinjao, who saw everything in his eyes, felt his heart tighten. What is supposed to come is finally coming. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1012. Chapter 1012. What is supposed to come finally comes. This time the emperor gathered everyone and the children here. Naturally it was not really for reunion. Now the emperor, who doesn't even care about the competition between the princes, how can he still be in the mood to deal with other people? So this banquet is clearly about catching turtles in an urn. What Bailey Rongs lacks most in alchemy right now is children. Today all the children happen to be gathered here. As long as Bailey Rong secretly orders people to break into the hall in the name of an assassin, everyone's eyes will naturally be focused on the emperor. On the body. And people from Bailey Rongs can kidnap children as a matter of course. By then, Even if everyone realizes that their child is lost, what will happen? The emperor has just been attacked by assassins. At this time, who dares to run in front of the emperor and cry out that the child is lost? Doesn't that show that he doesn't care about the emperor's life or death? To put it bluntly, by that time, the person who lost the child will have to admit it even if he doesn't recognize it. Han Jingchen and Yan Hanbei both noticed Fan Qingjiao's serious expression, and they subconsciously pulled the child closer to Fan Qingjiao. Han Jingchen, who had just experienced the tragic death of the second prince's concubine, grabbed Fan Qingjiao's hand even more tightly. Who can not be afraid when he knows that a thief is coming? The princess of Heshuo County also noticed something and asked Qing Chuan Crown Prince to hold Rengir's hand. Before Fan Qingjiao could reach out, she took the first step and hugged King Xin, who was placed on the chair aside. Fan Qingjiao is her goddaughter, and the children of the Hua family are naturally no different from her children of the Prince of Heshuo County. The sixth prince sitting opposite said. He also wants to find someone to hold hands with. Fan Qingjiao smiled gratefully at his adoptive mother, and then held Han Jingchen's hand, telling her not to panic too much. This time it seems that everyone is trapped and can only be slaughtered by Bailey Rong's people, but Fan Qingjiao will not forget that her fourth uncle is still outside. Whether or not Bailey Rong's plan can be disrupted tonight and a raid can be successfully carried out depends entirely on the fourth uncle. Fan Qingjiao may not trust others. But fourth uncle, Fan Qingjiao, completely believed it. But Fan Qingjiao couldn't explain it to the people sitting next to him. He could only ask them to stay calm as much as possible and not to look too panicked. After all, in addition to Bailey Rongs, there are also concubine Yu and Princess Yunyu, as well as Tang Juwei, who is hiding in the dark. Once they notice something, there will be endless troubles. Emperor Yongchang had probably counted the time, and his eyes seemed to be looking in the direction of Bailey Rongs. Seeing Bailey Rongs put down the wine cup and touch his arm to the teacup on the side, Emperor Yongchang's eyes shone with excitement. He knew very well that this was a signal sent by Bailey Rongs to the outside world. As long as the teacup breaks to the ground, people hiding in the dark will rush in and the child away in the chaos. Fan Qingjiao didn't know what Bailey Rong's code was, but looking at Bailey Rong's actions, she guessed it. She saw Bailey Rong's arm moving towards the teacup little by little. Leaning closer, Fan Qingjiao also tightened his hold on Han Jingchen's hand. Bailey Fengming seemed to be dealing with the second prince, who was constantly entangled around him nonchalantly, but in fact, he had already noticed Bailey Rong's actions from the corner of his eye. Inadvertently, Bailey Fengming twisted a grape seed on the table. At the same time, Bailey Rong's arm had already touched the teacup. Just when Bailey Fengming was about to shoot out the grape seeds in his hand, a man walked in from the outside, bent down against the wall and stood next to Bailey Rongs. As the man whispered a few words, Bailey Rongs' expression changed drastically in an instant. Fan Qingjiao took in Bailey Rongs' expression and knew in his heart that his fourth uncle had succeeded. At this time, Bailey Rongs had already ignored the teacups on the table. He stood up and walked in the direction of the emperor. The people in the hall were exchanging cups with high spirits. Naturally, no one noticed Bailey Rong's movements. On the contrary, Emperor Yongchang frowned and looked at the lonely teacup on the table, and did not come back to his senses for a long time. Bailey Rongs pretended to whisper to Baitu, and then Baitu led him to the emperor's side. He bent down slightly, and Bailey Rongs lowered his voice and whispered to the emperor. The emperor, who was originally frowning, suddenly had a fierce light in his eyes. Have you found out who it is? Bailey Rongs lowered his voice and said, the incident happened suddenly, but I have already sent people to investigate. Fan Qingjiao noticed the whispers between the emperor and Bailey Rongs, and moved his eyes to the direction of Bailey Fengming. By coincidence, Bailey Fengming was also looking at her. Looking at each other, Bailey Fengming smiled slightly. Under the light, he is extremely handsome. Immediately afterwards, the originally peaceful hall became noisy. Fan Kinjao understood instantly, and the people from Bailey Fengming had also taken action. The noise outside the main hall was obviously beyond everyone's expectations. Even concubine Yu and Yunyu were stunned. Although they had agreed before to take advantage of the crowd tonight to let their men pretend to be assassins and kidnap the children, from the beginning to the end, Bailey Rong's teacup was not broken. The signal was not sent, so how could the people below take action? Furthermore, although concubine Yu and Yunyu didn't know what Bailey Rong said to the emperor, they looked at his expression and it was obvious that something was wrong. Thinking like this, Yunyu and concubine Yu looked at Bailey Rongs in unison. At the same time, the emperor's eyes also fell on Bailey Rongs. After all, Bailey Rongs had informed him in advance that he would take action tonight. Now that there was a commotion outside, the emperor naturally subconsciously thought it's Bailey Rongs. Bailey Rongs was so cold that he was about to break out in a cold sweat when he saw several people. He quickly shook his head at the emperor. Something happened to the Taoist temple. How could he have the intention to let the people below take action? Fortunately, other people in the palace did not know what happened, but they did not notice the expressions of the emperor, concubine Yu, and Yunyu. Emperor Yongchang naturally believed in Bailey Rongs. When he saw him shaking his head, he knew something was really wrong. He quickly got up and left with Bailey Rong's support. As for the queen and the subsequent concubines, who cares about their lives? Queen Zhen 11 looked at the emperor who was only focused on escaping for her own life. Her eyes were cold and her heart was even colder. Although she had long known what kind of virtue this old scumbag was, she still couldn't help but feel sick to her stomach after being criticized by him every now and then. When Fan Kinjao saw the emperor getting up, it was naturally impossible for him to leave. Since she made a fuss, she would naturally make a fuss. She wanted everyone to see with their own eyes how the emperor, Bailey Rongs, and others looked pale, guilty and frightened. Thinking like this, Fan Kinjao looked at the sixth prince sitting opposite. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1013. Chapter 1013. Father, listen to what I have to say. The sixth prince trembled when Fan Kinjao saw him. The wine cup in his hand fell to the ground. The sound of the wine cup breaking suddenly attracted everyone's attention. The other eyes were fine, but facing the emperor's eyes, the sixth prince was really numb, but he knew that if it weren't for the secret obstruction of the crown prince and the crown prince, his child would have been killed by the three of them together with others. The prince was captured. When he thought of the child, the sixth prince finally summoned up all his courage. Father, please listen to my son. The sixth prince suddenly stood up and knelt in the main hall. Emperor Yongchang just wanted to go back to his palace first and avoid the noise outside. Looking at his son kneeling in front of him, he naturally had a bad look on his face. If you don't have any sense, get out of here. The sixth prince was so scolded that he trembled, but he knelt on the ground and did not get up. Seeing this, Bailey Rongs hurriedly said, Brother Sixth Emperor, you should have heard the sounds outside. The reason is still unknown. I know you must have something important to do, but no matter what, it still belongs to my father. Your safety is the greatest. When the storm outside calms down, how about I personally introduce you to your father? Bailey Rongs is indeed very Bailey Rongs. At this time, he has not forgotten to show in front of everyone the image of a good person who cares about the emperor's safety at first and cares about his brothers and sisters at the bottom. In the main hall, many courtiers showed admiration for Bailey Rongs for this reason. Only Fan Kinjao looked at the scene coldly, feeling the same as the queen just now. Nauseous enough to make you want to vomit. If you are really worried about your siblings, since you know that the prince is here, you should not say these words, but let the prince find a way to settle the sixth prince, so the better Bailey Wrongs does, the more clear it will be. They are crowding out Bailey Fengming. As for caring about his father's safety, if Bailey Wrongs really took the emperor's life seriously, he wouldn't have encouraged the emperor to stuff his mouth with those anti-natural pills. Kinjao, how about I go help the sixth prince? Han Jingchen was anxious and scared. She was worried that the sixth prince would not be able to bear it and would really stand up and step aside. In this case, all their previous plans would be over. All previous efforts were wasted. Don't underestimate the explosive power of the sixth prince. Fan Kinjao comforted him. No matter how timid a person is, there will always be someone or something they want to protect, so once their bottom line is really touched, timid people will often have the biggest rebound. Sure enough, in the middle of the hall, despite Bailey Wrong's words, the sixth prince just knelt there and remained motionless, as if he had died there. Bailey Wrongs didn't dare to show the slightest anger or impatience on his face, but he was already furious in his heart. He didn't know why the usually soft-spoken sixth emperor brother had such a right idea today. Father, please listen to what I said. When I came here just now, I saw a suspicious and sneaky person. But I was afraid, so I didn't say anything. The sixth prince is really. She was so afraid that the emperor would run away. While talking, she didn't forget to hug the thigh in front of her. When Bailey Wrongs and Emperor Yongchang heard this, their hearts tightened. Since you have become a thief, how can you not feel guilty? They were naturally afraid. What the sixth prince saw were the people under Bailey Wrongs who wanted to the child. Emperor Yongchang was silent for a long time before asking, "Did you see it? How many people were there?" The sixth prince thought for a while and said, just one." Bailey Wrongs finally felt relieved. In this way, it had nothing to do with him. Emperor Yongchang naturally understood that if Bailey Wrongs wanted to the child tonight, he would never let out just one person. However, after thinking about the sixth prince's words, he gradually calmed down. There is only one person making trouble, so whether he wants to commit murder or steal, what is there to fear? Since you have seen it a long time ago, why didn't you say it just now and say it now? Emperor Yongchang asked. Father, please listen to what I said, son, I am really scared. I thought maybe it would be fine if I didn't say anything, but now there is a commotion outside, son, no matter how scared I am, I still have to follow my father. The emperor reported it. The sixth prince cried until his nose was full of tears, all of which rubbed on the emperor's thigh. Crying is really crying. Scared. Emperor Yongchang. A sentence like "Father Emperor, your son's minister said," it made his head hurt. If these words had come from someone else, Emperor Yongchang would not have believed it easily. However, the sixth prince had always been timid and cowardly, and everyone in the palace knew that. Now that he had said so, Emperor Yongchang had no reason to doubt him. After thinking for a while, Emperor Yongchang asked again, "Did you see where the man went?" The sixth prince was extremely nervous, so he naturally stuttered even more when he spoke, "Let's go in the direction of the hunting forest." At this time, Emperor Yongchang and Bailey Wrongs also became nervous. They all know that there is a Taoist temple hidden under the hunting forest. Just now, people from the Taoist temple came to report that someone broke into the Taoist temple and stole the last few remaining pills. The reason why Bailey Wrongs left those pills in the Taoist temple was because the pills had not been completely refined, and they still lacked the final step of using living people as medicine guides, so he didn't care. But if someone really brings out the elixir, and then exposes it to everyone, how can you hide this? Emperor Yongchang naturally thought of this and quickly called the guards, saying, "Come here." Just before he finished speaking, Bailey Fengming quietly made a gesture to the outside world. At the same time, a guard came in with a man wearing night clothes. "Your Majesty, this person is hiding in Tibet in the east." The guards knelt down and said. "Who are you, Emperor Yongchang?" asked the man in black. In fact, he had already begun to make a quick calculation in his heart. No matter whether the person's purpose was to assassinate or steal, he would first find the right place to take the person away. Wait until privately and then interrogate carefully. "Isn't it clear to the emperor who the slave is?" the man in black said with a smile. Such an unexpected answer actually stunned Emperor Yongchang. Bai Tu, who was still standing next to him and supporting him, recognized the person at a glance. "Your Majesty, this person also serves in front of the emperor. He even stayed at night for the emperor several times. It's just that this person has only been in the palace for a short time. He can't serve the emperor personally, so I always ask him to help in front of the emperor." End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1014. Chapter 1014. The Heavy Hammer from King Pinglai. The people in front of the emperor were guarding and stealing. This was something that no one expected. But just when everyone was suspicious of the eunuch's motives, Bailey Rong's expressions were quite ugly. Since he is a person in front of the emperor, the chance of eavesdropping will be greatly increased. Then I remembered that the sixth prince just said that this person was going in the direction of the Taoist temple. Did he hear something he shouldn't have heard? No matter what you heard, you can't find anything out when being interrogated at this time. Concubine Yu immediately stood up and said, "This person has ulterior motives and must be investigated strictly. Why are you still dazed? Hurry up and put this little slave down and interrogate him carefully." Queen Zhen 11 looked at Concubine Yu in surprise. "The emperor is still here, what does Concubine Yu want to do?" Concubine Yu finally realized that she had lost her composure. She quickly smiled and said, "I just don't want such a thief to stain the emperor's eyes." The empress is actually calm, which I admire. These words clearly imply that the queen does not care about the emperor's safety. Queen Zhen 11 was indifferent and said with an expression on her face, "In front of the emperor, how can we, those of us in the harem, be allowed to shout and make noises? I believe that the emperor has made his own decision." Concubine Yu held back her breath and shut her mouth. She cursed in her heart that the queen was really good at talking. She had to say things like this. She couldn't speak even if she wanted to, otherwise she wouldn't be able to trust her. The emperor's suspicion? "Father, this person is indeed dangerous, and my mother's and concubine's worries are not unfounded. Please take him down first, and it will not be too late to investigate slowly and thoroughly," Bailey Rongs advised. Emperor Yongchang nodded, "Take the person down." As the words fell, another group of guards rushed in, pressed the and walked out. When Concubine Yu and Yunyu saw this, the big stone in their hearts finally fell to the ground. No matter what the person's purpose was, as long as he didn't expose the affairs of the Taoist temple, it would be fine. Fan Qinjiao took in the expressions of the two men and sneered in her heart. She specially arranged such a scene with Bailey Fengming, not just to scare these people. She wants to make these people truly understand what it means to be afraid. At the same time, the who was dragged out suddenly shouted, "Your Majesty, we are all human beings. Why can't we do what you can do? I just want to be like you, so I went that place, it's really nice there." When Bailey Rongs heard this, his hands and feet went cold. He quickly ordered, "How can we allow such a thief to talk nonsense in front of our father and not stop his mouth?" The guards tried their best to stop the eunuch's mouth, but the eunuch's voice still floated out. "Your Majesty has never been there, but this servant has really seen it." Fan Qinjiao listened to these words that were like gibberish, but logical, and knew that everyone present was also listening with their ears pricked up. Of course she knew that this belonged to Bailey Fengming, but she did not expect that among the guards, there will be people who can fly 100 miles away. Otherwise, how come there are so many guards but they can't cover their mouths? I thought there was nothing, but I didn't expect that the emperor's kindness left a lot for the slave. The slave is really grateful to the emperor. If the slave can really live forever, he will be grateful to the emperor forever. Immortality. Eternal life. These incomprehensible words made all the ministers present feel chills in their hearts. They all have been officials in the court all their lives. There are even many families whose ancestors have served the royal family for generations, and they are no strangers to the so-called theory of seeking elixirs for immortality. But they also knew very well that no matter which dynasty, generation, or country, once an emperor really embarked on the road of seeking elixirs, then the country would basically have no future to talk about. Putting aside the human, material, and financial resources, as the king of a country who longs for illusory things, how can he have the time to deal with government affairs? By then, Ziliang will surely be destroyed. Naturally, everyone looked at the emperor with a sense of inquiry and fear that they had never seen before. Because the emperor at this moment has touched their bottom line. Once a person's interests are violated, the person who violated them becomes their common enemy. Even if that person is the emperor. Emperor Yongchang has been looking for a benevolent and virtuous emperor all his life. What he fears most is being called a coward. Now he feels the torch-like eyes of the ministers around him, which is like sharp thorns piercing his back. At this moment, Emperor Yongchang's face was completely torn to the ground. Emperor Yongchang was angry, but even more panicked. He wanted to live forever, but what he was more afraid of was that he would be infamy for eternity. Seeing the emperor's expression, Bailey Rongs quickly walked up to the eunuch, stretched out his hand and covered the eunuch's mouth. He originally wanted to cover the until he fainted, but he didn't expect that it would only last a moment. Kung Fu is to notice something title in the palm of your hand. Immediately afterwards, the thing flowed out from the fingers. Under the lights of the main hall, it is eye-catching and dazzling. Yes. Is blood. Bailey Rongs was also startled and quickly retracted his hand. Then, he saw that the who had been shouting just now fell limply towards the ground. This person is died. What does the third emperor brother want to do? This person is a little more arrogant, but the ones who should be tried have not yet been tried, so he can't wait to kill people and silence them. Could it be that the third emperor brother knows something? King Pinglay said slowly. Deo, speaking carefully, he was seriously harmed by Bailey Rongs' trap. Now that he had caught the rumor, he would naturally launch a fierce attack. Bailey Rongs quickly took a few steps back, looked at King Pinglay and said, "Brother Pinglay, please don't talk nonsense. I just covered his mouth." King Pinglay smiled coldly, "I have never heard of it. Covering it can kill someone." Bailey Rongs was really at a loss for words now. He could only turn around and kneel in front of the emperor. "Father, my son is really unjust. Please tell me." Of course King Pinglay could not go to the emperor to criticize him, but he could mutter in private, "The third emperor brother is always so smart. No wonder my father has always loved you since he beat you when you were a child." The ministers present had their eyelids twitching when they heard these words. Just now they asked what he said about seeking immortality, and then the third prince killed the person. Thinking about it carefully, King Pinglay seemed to be right. The emperor has always been partial to the third prince, so this matter is not only related to the emperor, but also to the third prince. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1015. Chapter 1015 being used but there is no evidence. Concubine Yu looked at the suspicious-looking ministers in the hall and was so angry that she wished she could sew King Pinglay's mouth shut with her own hands to relieve her hatred. She looked back at Concubine Lu Ren and sneered, "Concubine Lu Ren really gave birth to a good child. My son, King Pinglay, is getting more and more capable." Concubine Lu Ren was oppressed by Concubine Yu from the moment she entered the palace. It can be said that he was bullied from a young age to an old age. Furthermore, Concubine Lu Ren never wanted her son to look towards the prince, so now she was naturally very respectful to concubine Yu, even trying to please her. Seeing that concubine Yu was pointing the finger at her, concubine Lu Ren quickly stood up and saluted. "You are so ignorant, I am here to apologize to concubine Yu." Seeing this, concubine Yu turned her head and smiled at King Pinglai. Such naked ridicule was like a thorn in King Pinglai's heart, but in the face of his mother's concubine, King Pinglai could not continue to say anything. Yunyu suddenly stood up and volunteered, "What kind of person this person is, I will know at a glance." It happened that at this time, Fan Kinjao also stood up and said, "Princess Yunyu has a body of thousands of gold. If I don't know the medical skills, that's it. Since I do, I can't let Princess Yunyu do the work alone." Since Yunyu took the initiative to leave the battlefield, Fan Kinjao naturally wanted to follow him. Because Fan Kinjao knew very well that this matter seemed to be over, but in fact it had just begun. The main event is yet to come. Of course concubine Yu didn't want Fan Kinjao to get involved, so she said, "It's just a dead man, just let Yunyu see it. All this effort is just for a dead slave, and the crown princess is putting the royal family's face on the line where." Empress Zhen 11 adhered to the principle that she would not speak if concubine Yu did not speak, and she would speak if concubine Yu did. She said, "The crown princess also thinks about Princess Yunyu. After all, Yunyu is also a princess born and raised by our royal family. How can I have to do such dirty work again?" The queen's words are wrong. The crown princess's past life experience is indeed hard to tell, but since she has gained the emperor's appreciation and entered the royal family, she should always put the honor of the royal family at the forefront. If you go by what concubine Yu said, Yunyu is more valuable than the crown princess. Since Yunyu can do it, why can't the crown princess do it? The emperor always said that the world is one family. We can't favor one over the other, right? Concubine Yu said something, and the empress followed her. No matter how quickly concubine Yu reacted, she couldn't withstand the continuous bombardment of the empress. However, the queen is still smiling. As a result, concubine Yu cannot show her anger no matter how angry she is. Here, the empress and concubine Yu were going back and forth, quarreling like crazy. The courtiers and family members over there were stunned and didn't dare to express their anger. I have long heard that the queen and concubine Yu have many disagreements, but I didn't expect that I would be lucky enough to see it with my own eyes today. Princess Yunyu is the meat that fell out of concubine Yu's belly. It is reasonable for concubine Yu to help support the show, but to put it bluntly, the crown princess is just a daughter-in-law who has never married, and the queen mother actually stands up for her like this. He even didn't hesitate to have a fight with concubine Yu. Just this kind of favor makes people envious and jealous. Since you two are up, come and take a look. Emperor Yongchang had a headache from the noise, and looked at Fan Kinjao and Yunyu and said, "Everyone is dead now anyway." As for how he died, Emperor Yongchang didn't care at all, as long as he didn't continue to bring out the alchemy matter. "Daughter-in-law, I obey." Fan Kinjao nodded and followed Yunyu up. Yunyu looked at Fan Kinjao next to her, feeling like she was being plotted but could not find any evidence. In fact, Yunyu's thinking was not wrong. Fan Kinjao had indeed set her up. The emperor would definitely be suspicious of this trouble. If she directly asked to inspect the body, it would only make the emperor more suspicious. That's why she specifically told Bailey Fengming that she must drag Bailey Rong to death. According to Yunyu's calculation, he must take the initiative to check, so that Bailey Rongs can be cleared of suspicion. She, on the other hand, could use Yunyu to get close to the body naturally so that the scene could continue. The eunuch's body lay motionless on the ground. As time passed, the temperature of the body itself became cooler little by little. Just looking at the corpse, Yunyu frowned in disgust. She had never seen a chicken killed since she was a child, but now she had to condescend to inspect the corpse of a slave. Just thinking about it made her furious. If Princess Yunyu really feels uncomfortable, it's not impossible for me to take full responsibility for her. Fan Kinjao's voice suddenly sounded beside him. Yunyu followed the sound and saw Fan Kinjao looking at her with worried eyes. No need, since we have already come here, let's take a look with the Crown Princess, Yunyu said and squatted down. Fan Kinjao didn't say anything more and also bent his knees. The hall suddenly became quiet. Everyone is looking this way, waiting for the final result. While Yunyu was inspecting the body, she speculated on the purpose of Fan Kinjao's words just now. It was clear that he did not want her to touch the body. In this way, could Fan Kinjao be able to frame the as Bailey Wrong's murder? Targeting Bailey Wrong's. It seems that the Crown Princess is going to be disappointed. The smile on Yunyu's face was obviously a lot bigger, because she felt that she had guessed Fan Kinjao's thoughts, and judging from the evidence in her possession, the eunuch's there were no fatal marks on his body. Obviously, this matter has nothing to do with Bailey Wrongs. How can I be disappointed? I can't understand what Princess Yunyu said. Fan Kinjao wanted to deny it. Just a hint of loneliness flashed in his eyes, but it still couldn't escape Yunyu's eyes. Yunyu saw it and sneered in her heart. Fan Kinjao really wanted to take the opportunity to frame him. How are you two doing with your investigation? Emperor Yongchang asked. Yunyu stood up and rushed in front of Fan Kinjao and said, returning to my father, I have not found any fatal wounds on this slave's body. It seems that this slave himself knew that he would not survive, so he thought about himself. Let's face it, this person has evil intentions and actually wants to drag the third prince into trouble with his own life. Yunyu's words can be said to have blocked all Fan Kinjao's escape routes. No matter how much frame up Fan Kinjao wants to frame now, there is number 300 taels of silver here, and it may make the emperor think that Fan Kinjao and they are in the same group, and they also want to harm Bailey Wrongs. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1016. Chapter 1016, encouraging the emperor's suspicion. After listening to Yunyu's words, Emperor Yongchang looked at Fan Kinjao and asked, is there anything else the crown princess would like to add? When I return to my father, what my daughter-in-law sees is the same as Princess Yunyu. There are indeed no fatal wounds on this servant. From this point of view, this matter has nothing to do with the third prince. Yunyu listened to Fan Kinjao's words, and the smile on her lips became more and more proud. It was rare that she was pressed on Fan Kinjao's head. How could she not be happy? Concubine Yu's back straightened up inexplicably. She didn't forget to look in the direction of the queen, raised her chin and snorted. Did you hear that? Even if you are the queen's own daughter-in-law, you still have to speak for my son? Guanpaner couldn't help but said to the surrounding princes and concubines, Our Highness is not afraid of the shadows. How can a dog slave be able to accuse him unjustly? Besides, the emperor attaches great importance to my highness. Yes, I won't listen to the slander from other villains. The atmosphere in the main hall still looks very heavy, but in fact there has been a wonderful change. The third prince and his party are obviously confident, and they look at the surrounding ministers with a bit more arrogance. Bailey Wrongs also didn't expect that Fan Kinjao would speak for him. Although it might be because he had no choice but to tell the truth, this feeling made him feel inexplicably happy. He took the initiative to walk up to Fan Kinjao and said, just now when the crown princess knelt in the main hall, I thought that anyone who could raise such a smart child must be upright. I guess the crown prince thought the same way, so he didn't worry about the princess' safety at all. On the contrary, I was worried about it in vain. At this time of the year, don't forget to step on the sound of phoenixes and lift yourself up. What is this going to do? It shouldn't be too obvious to sow discord. Fan Kinjao seemed not to notice the change in the surrounding atmosphere, and even ignored Bailey Rongs in front of him. He just looked at the emperor, paused and said, "There are indeed no obvious fatal wounds on this person, but my daughter-in-law discovered that this person the human veins are chaotic, with left and right, yin and yang, and up and down uneven and reversed. It seems that some pills may have been taken to cause this." Bailey Rongs. Emperor Yang Chang. Yunyu. I feel like the smile on my face is a little stiff. Others are not clear about it, but Bailey Rongs and even Emperor Yang Chang cannot be clear about it. The news just came out that the Taoist elixir was stolen. Now Fan Kinjao is saying that they died after taking the elixir. Who dares to think deeply about the meaning of this? Emperor Yang Chang's expression was naturally ugly. All the elixirs he prepared went into his stomach. Now someone died after taking the same elixirs as him. How could he not be afraid? Even the arms inside the sleeves started to tremble. It's fear and even more anger. Seeing the emperor's face gradually darken, not to mention Bailey Rongs and Yunyu, even concubine Yu in the distance was obviously unable to sit still. The emperor has been taking the elixir for such a long time without any problems. Even if that person really eats the stolen elixir, it is impossible for him to die. Yunyu looked at Fan Kinjao, who was talking eloquently, and her head was racing. Fan Kinjao just now clearly wanted to take the opportunity to frame Bailey Rongs, which led her to put all her thoughts on the trauma and only wanted to prove Bailey Rongs' innocence. But now listening to these words, Yunyu couldn't help but deeply suspect that everything Fan Kinjao had just done was intentional. Fan Kinjao deliberately made her think that, so she ignored the eunuch's pulse. So what is Fan Kinjao's purpose in doing this? Does she know the secret of the elixir? No, they have always been hiding in the dark and acting carefully. But if Fan Kinjao really doesn't know the inside story, what is his real purpose now? Yunyu looked at Fan Kinjao. He was obviously not as old as her, but she couldn't see through it. The feeling that this person is right in front of her but she can't grasp it at all makes Yunyu collapse. What made Yunyu vomit blood even more was that Fan Kinjao spoke again, "It's the three-part poison of medicine. Although this poison is not poisonous, all medicines have their own biases, including cold, bitter, and sweet. As the saying goes, if you are sick, you will suffer it, and if you are not sick, your body's ability to withstand it is also limited." It seems that this person must have taken a large amount of pills in a hurry, which caused the poisonous energy to attack his heart and die. As Fan Kinjao spoke, he did not forget to look at Yunyu beside him. "Princess Yunyu is also a medical student, am I right?" Yunyu. Does she nod or nod? Yunyu naturally understood what Fan Kinjao said was the most comprehensive concept in medical skills, but how could she nod at this time? Once she nodded her head, wouldn't it be clear that the elixir her father took was poisonous? Poisoning the dragon's body was a serious crime against the Shi clan. Not to mention her, not even Bailey Rongs or even concubine Yu could bear the consequences. I just looked at Princess Yunyu with her rosy face and raised lips. Why is her face so ugly now? But is there something wrong with her body? Do you need me to check her pulse? Fan Kinjao looked at Yunyu and asked. Princess, don't talk nonsense, I'm very well. Yunyu wished she could bite Fan Kinjao to death. How could Fan Kinjao be so hateful? But no matter how calm Yunyu stayed, the emperor's arms inside his sleeves trembled even more. He looked at Fan Kinjao and asked, I don't know something. Although I don't know what kind of elixir this is taking, if Xiao Xiao does the crown princess know what the consequences will be if you take it for a long time? Still pretending at this point? Since the emperor wants to pretend, Fan Kinjao can naturally follow suit. Returning to my father, this matter still depends on the pulse, but according to what my daughter-in-law has seen, since this pill has killed people, it can be seen that the toxin in it is very strong. If you take it for a long time, even if it is fine now, your body will eventually be destroyed in a few years. Emperor Yongchang could not stand firm and actually took several steps back. "Your Majesty, be careful of the dragon body," Bai Tu quickly stepped forward to help him. Seeing this, concubine Yu knew she had to say something. "It's just that a slave died. As for the elixirs and toxins, it's just idle talk. Why bother here to confuse the public with lies? If it disturbs the emperor, no one can afford it." Yunyu was reminded by her mother and concubine. She looked at Fan Qinjiao and said, "It's good for the crown princess to be able to imagine so much, but the person is dead. Whatever the crown princess says now is nothing more than speculation. Why bother? It causes unnecessary panic." Fan Qinjiao showed an expression as if she had not expected Yunyu to say such a thing. She was both surprised and aggrieved. However, she really shut her mouth obediently, as if she had been bullied but could not speak. "Yunyu, what is this doing?" Those who didn't know thought she had put it on Fan Qinjiao's neck. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1017. Chapter 1017 Victory in the First Battle. Fan Qinjiao was naturally disgusted with Yunyu's hypocrisy of always pretending to be a good person, so now despite Yunyu's face turning black to ashes, she knelt in front of the emperor and said, "Princess Yunyu, are you right? It's wrong, it's my daughter-in-law who said something she shouldn't have said, please punish me." Yunyu was so numbed by Fan Qinjiao that she really couldn't even speak. Fan Qinjiao never thought about peacefully coexisting with Yunyu from the beginning. He used to ignore Yunyu just because Yunyu went out to study medicine, so he had to get out. But now Yunyu has repeatedly if Fan Qinjiao wants to get ahead, it is naturally impossible for Fan Qinjiao to continue to coddle Yunyu. If you have the ability, continue. If you don't have the ability, you will have to be pressed to the ground and rubbed by me. Concubine Yu's eyes turned black with anger. How could Fan Qinjiao, a little bitch, pretend to be pitiful? Your Majesty. Concubine Yu really couldn't sit still. She got up and wanted to walk this way. Emperor Yongchang turned his back and waved his hands, saying, "Don't you see how chaotic it is here? It's better for the noble concubine not to interfere in this matter." Concubine Yu was startled, her expression was even worse than that of Yunyu. Since marrying the emperor, concubine Yu has had a smooth journey. With her face, she has been able to dominate the palace over the years, and even the queen has to accept her defeat. But now the emperor actually humiliated her in public, which had never happened before. Looking at concubine Yu's face, Queen Zhen 11 felt extremely happy. She smiled and said, "The emperor will naturally make up his mind about this matter. Concubine Yu should just wait for the result with peace of mind." Hearing this, concubine Yu almost vomited blood on the spot. This matter involves their whole family, how can she wait with peace of mind? Do we really have to wait for the emperor to become completely suspicious, so that the Yu family will be implicated in 10 clans, and even the eggs of the Yu family will be shaken to pieces? But seeing that the emperor had no intention of paying any attention to her, concubine Yu also knew that she could not force herself at this time, otherwise it would only make the situation worse. Bai Tu looked at the emperor's face and suggested in a low voice, "Your Majesty, why don't you go back and rest first, and leave this place to your servants to clean up?" Emperor Yongchang really wanted to be quiet now, so he nodded and walked out of the hall. The palace people moved very quickly. In the blink of an eye, they carried the body down and cleaned up the ground. But after what had just happened, no one was in the mood to continue sitting here, especially the officials, women and children, who were scared to death. At the critical moment, Queen Zhen 11 was considerate and allowed everyone to disperse early. After everyone got up and sent the queen off respectfully, they all walked out of the palace. Fan Qinjiao followed the others and was walking out when he saw Yan Hanbei coming over and whispered, "I didn't expect that the emperor still took it lightly and put it down. He had no intention of sending anyone to investigate." Fan Kinjao pulled Yan Hanbei back, and when he saw no one behind him, Cai said, if everything else goes well, this matter is the Emperor's greatest expectation, and the Emperor will not back down easily. Besides, the Emperor is suspicious. Fake, but not a headless fool. Yan Hanbei was stunned. So you didn't expect any results from today from the beginning? Fan Kinjao smiled and shook his head. That's not really true. In fact, the current results are just right. Today, first, my fourth uncle secretly stole the elixir from the Taoist temple, then Bailey Fengming found someone to pretend to have swallowed the elixir and made noise in the hall, and finally she came forward to point out that there was something wrong with the elixir. All of these may seem like small things, but once they add up, they will cause tons of damage to the Emperor. The Emperor wants to live forever, but there is no way he will risk his own life. As long as the seeds of suspicion have been planted, the rest of the matter will be much easier to handle. As he was talking, he saw Bailey Rongs and Guan Painter walking over side by side, followed by Fan Swinning, who lowered their heads all the way as if they had no intention of speaking. Guan Painter took the initiative and said, it's better for my highness to accompany me back. Speaking of which, why don't you see his highness the crown prince and King Pinglai? Yan Hanbei just couldn't stand Guan Painter's self-proclaimed virtue, so he opened his mouth and said, there are so many princes and concubines, but none of them is proud to pester their husbands all day long. Since the third prince's concubine is so reluctant to let go of the third prince, why did you take the initiative to tie it to the third prince's waistband? Guan Painter frowned and said, why do you speak so rudely? I am a rude person, but I can't compare with the third prince's concubine. Speaking of it, the Guan family's tutoring is also unique. They actually raised their daughter to be a second wife. Speaking of which, the third prince's concubine has a good life. If the previous third prince's concubine is still there, I'm afraid it doesn't have anything to do with the family now. Yan Hanbei is very neat when it comes to attacking people. He would just poke wherever it hurts. Guan Painter's face turned blue after being poked. He raised his finger and pointed at Yan Hanbei and said, insult my Guan family, you are so brave. If these words were said in the past, Yan Hanbei might really be afraid, but now she is the princess of Qin. The Guan family has made great contributions, but it was also established by the ancestors. Your current Guan family is just sitting on nothing. That's all. How can she be compared with the princess? Comparing the previous honors with the current princess and concubine, the official family of the third prince and concubine is really very prestigious, but if word reaches the emperor's ears, both the Guan family and the third prince and concubine will probably fall behind. This is a crime of contempt for Long Wei. Fan Kinjao reminded with a smile. Guan Painter's face turned pale, and she frowned and said, you don't have to scare me here. The emperor has always loved our highness, so naturally he will not pay attention to those rumors. Is this the plan to make the emperor love the house and the city? Fan Kinjao smiled and said, yes, the emperor does love his highness the third. Even when he went back to the palace to rest today, he was not willing to let his highness accompany him. This is something I can't wait for. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Rong's expression changed instantly. In the past, he would naturally accompany his father to show his status in front of him. But now that something like this happened, his own side was still in chaos. Before finding out the matter, he rushed to his father's side. Wasn't he taking the initiative to find trouble? It's just such a thing that he knows but others may not know. Now there are many ministers and family members who have left together. When Fan Kinjao said these words, it was naturally clear that he was different from the past. Incidentally, Guan Painter didn't hear it at all, and said smugly, that's natural. The emperor naturally feels sorry for my highness, so he asked my highness to go back and rest early. Bailey Rongs. I felt like I had been slapped in the face invisibly. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1018. Chapter 1018 Temporary Calm. Fan Kinjao could see Bailey Rong swallowing hard despite being furious, and felt indescribably happy. Bailey Rongs is best at using the women around him to make profits for him, but now he is slapped in the face by the chess piece in his hand. This feeling really shouldn't be too sour. We are all a family, why bother making noises, just be careful not to get angry. Bailey Rongs held Guan Panner's hand, with deep tenderness in his eyes. Guan Panner felt warm in her heart and actually closed her mouth. Such an incident happened tonight. I'm afraid everyone in the palace will be in panic. Since the Crown Prince and King Pinglai are not free, why not let my people send the Crown Princess and Princess Pinglai back? Bailey Rongs looked at Fan Qing again. Yao and Yan Hanbadeo still look like gentle gentlemen. It's really hard for him to put on such a fake face after going through something like that. Yan Hanbei was dumbfounded and seriously doubted whether the alchemy issue really had nothing to do with the third prince. Otherwise, how could this man be so calm? I won't bother you, Your Highness, and I'll take my leave. Fan Kinjao pulled Yan Hanbei and left, not even leaving Bailey Rongs with his peripheral vision. In the last life, Bailey Rongs was able to deceive everyone, but he could not deceive her. If we talk about hypocrisy, no one in this world would dare to be called the first even though he is called the second best. As soon as the others left, Guan Panner turned to look at Fan Swinning. You useless trash, look at how majestic Fan Kinjao is. Look at you, how can you compare with others? These words touched on Fan Swinning's pain points. However, she did not argue with Guan Panner. Instead, she lowered her head pretending to be pitiful and leaned against Bailey Rong's side. Guan Panner reached out angrily and was about to pull Fan Swinning away, but Bailey Rongs grabbed her hand. I'll take Aunt Fan back first, and it won't be too late for the third prince to calm down before going back. After saying that, he took Fan Swinning and left. Guan Panner was left alone, standing messy in the night wind. Han Jingchen saw Yan Hanbei and Fan Kinjao talking together in a group, and she wanted to get closer, but before she could leave, she felt her sleeves tightening. When she turned around, she saw the sixth prince grabbing her wrist. His hands collapsed on the ground. Your Highness, what's wrong with you? Han Jingchen was startled. The sixth prince nodded. It's true that I feel uncomfortable. Han Jingchen hurriedly bent down and asked, where do you feel uncomfortable? Can the doctor take a look at it? The sixth prince pointed at his heart. It's beating too fast. Han Jingchen. You are so scared. Since you are so scared, why didn't you agree to it yourself? Kinjao didn't even put it on your neck. Han Jingchen picked up the sixth prince and followed the crowd down the steps. Hearing this, the sixth prince almost cried on the spot. Don't I also want to set a good example in front of my son? If what happened this time really happened, everyone would be in the spotlight, except I huddled back and remained motionless. Whenever I thought about my son looking at me when he was older, I felt terrified. After all, I am still afraid of losing myself in front of my son. In fact, it is true that the sixth prince was not the only one who was in trouble this time. King Pinglai, who had just made a speech in the main hall, was called away by Lu Renfei's people as soon as he left the main hall. Needless to say, he must have been scolded. In order to avoid suspicion, it was naturally impossible for Fan Kinjao to go to the Queen's palace. After parting ways with Yan Hanbei, he returned to his own courtyard. All that is left to do now is to wait. After experiencing this incident, the atmosphere in the palace became tense invisibly. The courtiers stayed in their own courtyards all day long, and the women and children were naturally not allowed to show their faces. For a time, there was no one in sight in the huge palace. Such a palace is far more breathless than when the second prince and concubine died. Cao Lishan was still detained by concubine Lu Shu. During this period, concubine Lu sent people to ask Fan Kinjao's opinion several times, but Fan Kinjao delayed her for various reasons. Now that the palace is not peaceful, how can she have time to look at Cao Lishan? It would be better to leave the person with concubine Lu Shu first, and then let Cao Lishan come back after the matters in the palace are settled. Wu Qiuzao always felt a little uneasy, so he said while eating, "It's okay to leave Cao Lishan with concubine Lu Shu now. I'm afraid that Cao Lishan will tell the old lady about this when she returns to the main city." After all, Cao Lishan had a life-saving grace for the old lady. It was precisely because of this that Cao Lishan could stay in the Hua family. Originally, the old lady owed Cao Lishan something. If the old lady knew that Cao Lishan was not treated well in the palace, I am afraid that I will blame myself even more. The person was taken away by concubine Lu Shu. Even if Cao Lishan wants to complain to her grandmother, how can she make peace with her? Grandma owes Cao Lishan something, but she is not confused, Fan Kinjao said calmly. Besides, Cao Lishan had always wanted to be obedient and sensible in front of her grandmother, so she violated concubine Lu Shu and was placed under house arrest. Did she dare to say anything? Of course I don't dare. Compared with filing a complaint, she was more worried about damaging her image in the mind of her grandmother. The two people were talking. King Xin was already full. The little guy was making trouble. He couldn't sit still after eating. He grabbed Ren Geer's sleeves just to get some air. Seeing this, Brother Ren put down his chopsticks and said, "Little aunt, you and mother eat slowly while I go out to play with King Xin," even though he hadn't finished eating. Fan Kinjao smiled and touched Brother Ren's little head, "Remember not to leave the yard." Ren Geer nodded and went to the courtyard accompanied by the palace maid. King Xin is at this age when she is heartless, and how can she feel the atmosphere of the palace? Not long after, she was hugged by the palace maid and started playing with Brother Still, chasing each other. Listening to the laughter in the yard, Wu Qiuzao's irritable mind finally calmed down a little. It was because of this that she realized and said curiously, "Speaking of which, King Xin's relationship with Cao Lishan was quite good some time ago. There was even a relationship. I had to stay close to Cao Lishan before I could sleep. I didn't expect that. I hadn't seen Cao Lishan in a few days and had no intention of looking for anyone." Fan Kinjao frowned after hearing this. "Sister-in-law, could you please be more careful?" She had never taken care of a child, so she naturally didn't understand what Wu Qiuzao meant. When Wu Qiuzao saw that his sister-in-law, who had always been all-powerful, was frowning, she smiled and said, "My sister-in-law doesn't know something. If you are obsessed with such a big child, you are most clingy. I think of Brother Ren a few years ago. He is also very dependent on me, and he will cry when he doesn't see anything like eating or sleeping." "So sister-in-law is saying that King Xin should find Cao Lishan?" Fan Kinjao asked. "After all, Cao Lishan has never given birth to King Xin. Logically speaking, she is not as annoying as Brother Ren. When I first came to the palace, I saw that King Xin didn't attach much importance to Cao Lishan, but somehow one day, King Xin was, I really like being next to Cao Lishan." "When did this happen?" "Just a few days ago. I thought about the moodiness of children and didn't care. Originally, I thought King Xin couldn't see that Cao Lishan would get angry, but now I see that King Xin eats and sleeps normally and I feel relieved." Cao Lishan breathed a sigh of relief. It is no joke for children to pick up people. They may not eat or sleep, and some may even cry all the time. Originally, she had done everything well. If King Xin cried, she would take Renjir to coax her non-stop. Unexpectedly, King Xin would be so calm. Wu Qiuzao said this unintentionally, but Fan Kinjao had to think about it. "Sister-in-law, maybe you can take me to the house where Cao Lishan lives." Fan Kinjao had already stood up when he spoke. Wu Qiuzao was stunned, and quickly stood up and nodded, "She lives in my house." "Sister-in-law, come with me." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1019. Chapter 1019. Whether he is a human or a ghost must be found out. While King Xin and Rengir were playing around in the yard, Wu Qiuzhao took Fan Qinjiao to the yard in front and opened the door. The house was not big but was very tidy. Wu Qiuzhao pointed to the soft house not far away and said, "Originally, Cao Lishan wanted to clean up the wing room and live in it, but I thought that after all, he was a relative of our Hua family, so it was always hard to let people live there. It's a wing room, and it's better to live closer to me, so I can sleep on a soft bed with Cao Lishan." Fan Qinjiao walked to the soft bed and stretched out his hand to touch, but did not find anything abnormal. Then he walked around the bed again and stretched out his hand to fumble for a while. Although he still didn't touch anything, he frowned. "Didn't let go." According to what my sister-in-law said, King Xin's attachment to Cao Lishan arose suddenly. I think that during that time, King Xin probably liked being with Cao Lishan very much. Otherwise, her sister-in-law would not have said what she just said. But the strange thing is, Fan Qinjiao never knew about this. This is very strange. Even if Cao Lishan doesn't want her to know that King Xin is clinging to her, Cao Lishan can hide it. At such a young age, King Xin can't pretend it. But it happens that every time in front of Fan Qinjiao, King Xin really has never been clingy. Cao Lishan. What does this mean? Just as Fan Qinjiao was thinking about it, he saw a small package brought over by Wu Qiuzhao and said, "This is the package that Cao Lishan brought to the palace. I think everything should be here." She didn't know what was wrong with her sister-in-law, but she could tell that she was looking for something. Fan Qinjiao took the package and opened it. Inside were a few pieces of clothes, but he didn't see anything else. But when Fan Qinjiao stretched out his hand to fumble for the clothes one by one, his hand stopped. After touching the chest of one of the clothes, Fan Qinjiao said, "Sister-in-law, please find me a pair of scissors." Wu Qiuzhao quickly turned around and took the scissors from the cabinet. Just when he was wondering what his sister-in-law wanted to do, he saw Fan Qinjiao cutting open Cao Lishan's clothes, and then a piece of fabric fell out. Wu Qiuzhao was shocked, picked up the fabric and inspected it carefully. "Old lady, I felt sorry for Cao Lishan. I remember that before I came to the palace, I specially asked a tailor to come to the house to measure Cao Lishan's size. I made a lot of clothes at once. Although the shop it's not too big, but it's definitely not something that can be done carelessly. The style and appearance of this fabric are completely different from the material of Cao Lishan's clothes. Which tailor would be so careless?" Fan Qinjiao took the fabric and first touched the texture and feel on it with his hands. He felt it delicately. Even if it is the best material, there will never be even a trace of texture. It can be seen that it has been soaked in something in advance. Then he put it in front of his nose and smelled it carefully. Then, a faint medicinal fragrance hit his face. Sure enough, it was what she thought, it smelled like thorn algae. "Sister-in-law, what on earth is this cloth?" "Don't scare me." Wu Qiuzhao looked at the gradually cold light in Fan Qinjiao's eyes and felt confused. The thorn algae is a medicinal material that grows in the north of Ziliang. Its rhizomes emit a unique sweet smell. The villagers in their hometown often use the thorn alga as a bait to set traps to attract nearby people. The prey takes the bait. Fan Qinjiao looked at Wu Qiuzhao. Wu Qiuzhao trembled all over and looked at the piece of cloth with wide eyes. "So, what my sister-in-law means is..." Fan Qinjiao nodded. "Think about Cao Lishan, it was because she had something like this hidden in her clothes that she made King Xin follow her. But since there is a smell, why don't I smell it?" It's not that Wu Qiuzhao doesn't believe Fan Qinjiao, but he always feels that Cao Lishan should not have such means. She had never even heard of this thorn algae. Where did Cao Lishan find it? The smell of thorn algae is not too strong, and the cloth not only has the smell of thorn algae, but also other medicinal materials. It seems that someone prepared the potion in advance and soaked the cloth in it. Adults may not be able to smell it, but children with a sense of smell as sensitive as animals will definitely be addicted to it. Wu Kaiozeo. Hello, is this a ghost story? Otherwise why would she feel cold all over? Fan Kinjao naturally didn't believe that Cao Lishan, who had been oppressed by MRSCAO's family since she was a child, would have the opportunity to learn medical skills. But since it wasn't her, it proved that there were other people behind her back helping her with suggestions. Thinking about what Wu Kaiozeo said before, Fan Kinjao understood everything. Cao Lishan wanted to attract Bailey Fenming's attention but had no idea how to do it. It would be perfect if she let it go in the name of King Xin. After all, everyone knows that Bailey Fenming likes and loves King Xin. It seems that the person standing behind Cao Lishan is far smarter than Cao Lishan. Sister-in-law, what should we do next? Wu Kaiozeo was scared to death. She wished that Cao Lishan would be held captive by concubine Lu Shu and never come back. Otherwise, she would not even be able to sleep well. Fan Kinjao knew very well that concubine Lu Shu took Cao Lishan away because she was concerned about the empress, but she would never really keep Cao Lishan by her side forever. Turning around and returning to her room, she brought the medicine box, then took out a few medicinal materials and soaked them in warm water, and then gently put the cloth in. When the cloth was completely soaked by the potion, Fan Kinjao picked up the cloth and placed it by the window for ventilation. When it was completely dry, he asked Wu Kaiozeo to sew it back into Cao Lishan's clothes. Wu Kaiozeo. This result was something she never expected. Since I know there's something wrong with this thing, it's better to throw it away quietly, Wu Kaiozeo suggested. I knew there was a problem, so I should have put it back, so as not to alert the snake. But please rest assured, sister-in-law, I have completely removed the medicinal effect of the thorn algae on this fabric. Even if it is sewn back into the clothes, it will have any impact on King Xin, Fan Kinjao said softly. She naturally would not put King Xin in danger. But just let Cao Lishan go in such a confused way, the one standing behind her? Fan Kinjao definitely won't. Whether it's a human or a ghost, you have to find it out to feel at ease. Seeing what Fan Kinjao said, Wu Kaiozeo felt that he could not always hide the enemy in the dark, so he quickly sewed the fabric back, but when he thought of having to face Cao Lishan and him pretending to be fine in the same room, Wu Kaiozeo felt uncomfortable everywhere. Fan Kinjao could see his sister-in-law's nervousness and rejection. After returning to his house, he picked a decent ginseng plant from the medicine box and had it delivered to concubine Lu Shu. With Lu Shufei's intelligence, she would naturally understand the meaning. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 1020. Chapter 1020 Concubine Use Skills. Concubine Lu Shu originally wanted to let her go, but before she could say anything, she saw the ginseng sent by the crown princess placed in front of her. I heard that the Tao family has been studying medicine for generations, and every Tao family medical girl has a lot of rare medicinal materials. This princess is stingy, and she actually sent such a common ginseng, Mammy whispered. Lu Shufei sneered and said, "Why are you here to deliver ginseng? It's obvious that you don't want that Cao to go back." "What do you mean? The princess is not getting along with her cousin. If that's the case, how about the old slave infiltrating the princess's cousin secretly?" Mammy suggested. Now that the second prince is dead, concubine Lu Shu has no one who can contact the prince and the queen, and there is also no one who can hold the second prince. Seeing that the second prince and the third prince were getting closer and closer, it was naturally the wisest choice for concubine Lu Shu to turn to concubine Yu at this time. Go and have someone look at the person named Cao. Tomorrow you will continue to teach her the rules. Don't say anything else, Lu Shufei warned. Mammy persuaded, Mother, this is a good opportunity. Concubine Lu Shu waved her hand, no need to say more, I have made up my mind. Seeing this, Grandma didn't dare to speak any more, so she could only bow and retreat. Concubine Lu Shu looked at her mother's retreating figure without thinking. She wanted to take refuge with concubine Yu, but did concubine Yu really care about such a small fight? Even if there is a gap between the cousin named Cao and the crown princess, what can we do? Can a person who can't even tell the difference between east, west, north, and south standing in the main city really pose a threat to the crown princess? Who is the crown princess? How can she be compared to that little village girl? Concubine Lu Shu sighed. If she wanted to take refuge with concubine Yu, she had to think of another way. As for the concubine's cousin from the Cao family, it would be more appropriate to use it to stabilize the queen's side first. Wu Qiuzhao didn't see Cao Lishan come back for several days. Gradually, her initial panic turned into calmness. Fan Qinjiao felt at ease when he looked at his sister-in-law who had finally regained her composure. In this palace, she still expected her sister-in-law to monitor Cao Lishan's every move. Naturally, she could not let Wu Qiuzhao take the initiative to retreat. For several days, the palace was still as deserted as a dead person. On the contrary, the third prince and Yun Yu walked diligently to the emperor's palace. Although the emperor had always stayed behind closed doors, Yun Yu and the third prince still went to see him several days a day without delay. Soon, word spread in the palace that the third prince was filial and considerate, working day and night for the emperor's dragon body. As a result, the other princes were put in an awkward position. Earlier, they did not dare to disturb their father's peace. Now that the news came out, they could not go, otherwise it would be clear that they should learn from it. The third prince is copying the gourd and painting the scoop. King Pinglai had been scolded by Lu Renfei in the past few days and his head hurt. Now that such rumors have spread in the palace, Lu Renfei feels that her idea is right, and she is constantly trying to make people spread the news to King Pinglai. Go to your palace. Yan Hanbei had no problem staying alone in the yard. He just came to Fan Qinjiao with the little princess in his arms, and he couldn't stop complaining. I didn't expect that concubine Lu Ren would not give up even now, and she was still thinking about asking the prince to join the third prince's side. Has she really forgotten how badly the prince was deceived by the third prince in the past? Yan Hanbei didn't dare to say these words. To tell anyone, I can only speak freely to Fan Qinjiao. Fan Qinjiao held the sleeping little princess in his arms and gently said, I heard that when concubine Lu Ren entered the palace, it was the most smooth time for concubine Yu in the palace. To put it bluntly, concubine Lu Ren saw concubine Yu's domineering and arrogant nature, so she naturally believed that concubine Yu had more confidence. Yan Hanbei thought for a while and said, when I went to the palace to see concubine Lu Shu, I also heard concubine Lu mention that she had a pretty good relationship with concubine Yu when she was young. At that time, concubine Lu became pregnant with the prince, and concubine Yu also visited her. She made a promise that when she gives birth to a prince, she will let the prince keep her company, but it's a pity. No one expected that King Pinglai would be born with a congenital disability. Fan Qinjiao didn't know much about the old things in the palace. If Yan Hanbei hadn't mentioned it today, she wouldn't have known that King Pinglai didn't even cry when he was born. The imperial doctor and Po Wen who delivered the baby were even more so. He secretly said that King Pinglai was unlucky. Fortunately, Ji Hongliao came forward in the end and was able to save King Pinglai's life. But for many years to come, even though Ji Hongliao had been taking good care of King Pinglai's body, King Pinglai's legs showed no color at all. This is why, although King Pinglai is the eldest son of the emperor, he does not receive the emperor's attention. Fan Kinjao felt that the master should not only spend time on King Pinglay, but also spend a lot of effort on the emperor. Otherwise, with the emperor's suspicion, how could he allow a person who was regarded as ominous? What about people who always stay by their side? Even if that person is his biological son. This is the indifference and selfishness of the emperor. For the sake of one's own interests, everything can be weighed and sacrificed. I've also paid attention to King Pinglay's legs, but it's a pity that the problem was caused in the mother's womb. Not to mention the master, even if it's a god, it will be difficult for him to stand up, Fan Kinjao said truthfully. She is just a doctor, not a god. I know, don't talk about me. Even the prince himself has already accepted it and got used to it. I just can't figure out why the ministers in the palace didn't even know about the elixirs and Taoist temples that day. I didn't ask any questions, but now that I heard that the third prince was diligent in going to the emperor, I followed the public opinion and said that the third prince is filial and considerate. This is concubine Yu's ability, Fan Kinjao sneered. Concubine Yu relying on the emperor's favor to get involved in politics is not a new thing. Now it is simply easy to use the opportunity to build momentum for her son to cover up what they said that day. Are the ministers in the court all fools? Yan Hanbei couldn't figure it out. No matter how powerful concubine Yu was, she was still a woman deep in the harem. Are the minds of those ministers so stupid that they would be fooled around? Fan Kinjao said, I'm not a fool, but too smart. The words of that day were indeed deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. People are suffering now, but there is no evidence. All the ministers in the court are all human beings. Without evidence, who dares to stir up the trend in private? Since the current public opinion in the palace is that the third prince is filial, they might as well join in and give concubine Yu a favor. End of this chapter.